I'm Dr. Rudi Newman, a historian and author working with Hertfordshire's Library Service, and in this series we'll be revealing some of the important, obscure and sometimes unusual stories to be found in Hertfordshire's history. The First Battle of St Albans in 1455 was a key moment in British history, the beginning of what would become the Wars of the Roses. Richard, Duke of York, with the aid of Richard, Earl of Warwick, successfully defeated Henry VI's forces, cementing York's power as protector of the realm and essentially holding the king prisoner. For the following months until Parliament met, Henry was all but incarcerated at Hertford Castle, and while afterwards he was nominally free to rule, often following Queen Margaret's advice, York remained a key political figure. His stability, however, was not to last, and St Albans would once again witness conflict. In 1459, 4 years after the first fighting, a great council was to be held in Coventry, but York and other lords refused to attend, fearing it was a pretext for arrest, the same circumstances that had previously led to the First Battle of St Albans. Instead, they raised private armies, leading to a full civil war, battles occurring across the north of England. Defeated, York and Warwick fled to Ireland, but in June Warwick returned with new forces and had several victories, most notably capturing King Henry at the Battle of Northampton. York later returned and declared himself king, but while he and Warwick were now effectively ruling, York discovered he had little actual support for his claim, instead only gaining the succession for his son, Edward IV, later succeeded by his brother, Richard III. Meanwhile, pro-Henry Lancastrian forces were assembling in the north, defeating and killing York at the Battle of Wakefield. As the victorious Lancastrians moved south, fractured Yorkist armies under Warwick and York's son Edward attempted to combine, but were hampered by further fighting, most notably from a pro-Lancastrian Welsh force led by Owen and Jasper Tudor. Wishing to block any advance of Queen Margaret's forces towards London, Warwick, with the captive King Henry in tow, marched to St Albans, setting up defences and cannons across the northern part at Bernard's Heath. Dividing his troops into 3 bodies, facing north and extending to No Man's Land Common, they assumed that Margaret's forces would use this main road. However, Warwick's steward, Sir Henry Lovelace, had been captured, possibly giving valuable information, which in part led to Margaret capturing Dunstable and moving from there to the west of St Albans via Watling Street. Having bypassed Warwick's army, on the 17th of February 1461, Margaret attacked from behind. Struggling to turn his forces, Warwick's more mobile archers offered strong resistance, fighting being especially fierce around the clock tower, where Margaret's first wave was pushed back. A second wave skirted around them, though, entering St Peter Street via Folly Lane, taking control of the town after hours of continuous fighting. With Margaret's troops moving to the north, Warwick still struggled to turn his forces, resulting in each unit of soldiers attacking individually rather than as a combined army. Outnumbered and demoralised, Warwick and his troops withdrew to Oxfordshire. There was a surprise in store, though. Found at Bernard's Heath, sitting under a tree singing, his mental health deteriorating, was King Henry. Joining Margaret's forces, he was no longer a prisoner, and the Lancastrians, now seen flying the royal standard, no doubt worsened the Yorkist army's morale at the close of the battle. In the aftermath of the battle, around 2,000 were dead. In London, Warwick had York's son quickly crowned Edward IV, in opposition to Margaret's own son Edward, cementing Warwick's nickname of Kingmaker, and this new succession was strengthened after the Battle of Towton, when Margaret and her son fled overseas. King Henry was imprisoned again until his death in May 1471. Warwick would not see the results of his actions, though, being killed in the Battle of Barnet the previous April. The reign of the new Edward IV was far from the end of the conflict, peace only fully returning with Henry Tudor in 1485. But the Second Battle of St Albans, as with the first, played a notable role in the Wars of the Roses. It was a turning point for Warwick, a defeat largely due to his mismanagement that resulted in losing King Henry, so losing the tool with which he could control the country. From that point, his control began to slip, and the hierarchy of power in England entered a new chapter. If you would like to know more, there is plenty available, and Hertfordshire libraries are a great place to start, with many online resources alongside material in your local library. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.